The rain battered the windows of my tiny massage studio, a relentless drumbeat that mirrored the chaos in my chest. I was 25, barely scraping by in Portland, Oregon, with dreams bigger than my bank account. And then she walked in, Lila, a stranger who'd unravel my world in ways I never saw coming. My hands trembled as I adjusted the lavender-scented candles on the shelf, their flickering light casting shadows across the worn wooden floor. The studio, tucked in a quiet corner of southeast Portland, was my sanctuary, a place where I could lose myself in the rhythm of touch, easing the burdens of strangers. But that evening, as the storm raged outside, I felt a strange electricity in the air, like the universe was holding its breath. Lila stepped through the door, shaking rain from her long, wavy black hair. She was maybe 26, with eyes like storm clouds, gray, deep, and impossible to read. Her leather jacket clung to her frame, damp from the downpour, and she carried herself with a quiet confidence that made my pulse skip. "You're Harper, right?" she asked, her voice low, almost swallowed by the rain's roar. I nodded, suddenly aware of how small the room felt with her in it. I led her to the massage table, draped in crisp white sheets, and handed her a towel. "You can change behind the screen," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She smiled, a small, fleeting thing that sent warmth curling through me, and disappeared behind the bamboo divider. I busied myself with the oils, trying to ignore the way my heart thudded. I'd massaged dozens of clients, men and women, young and old, but none had ever made the air feel this charged. When Lila emerged, wrapped in the towel, my breath caught. Her shoulders were bare, her skin glowing under the soft light, and there was a vulnerability in her posture that made me want to protect her from whatever storms she carried. She lay face down on the table, and I began, my hands moving with practiced ease over her back. The rain outside seemed to fade, replaced by the quiet rhythm of her breathing. "You're good at this," she murmured after a few minutes, her voice muffled against the table. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Thanks. It's kind of my thing." I didn't tell her how much I loved this work, how it felt like I was stitching people back together, one knot at a time. As I worked, she started talking, small things at first, about the city, the rain, the coffee shop she'd stopped at before coming here. Her words were careful, like she was testing the waters, but there was a warmth to them that drew me in. I found myself responding, sharing bits of my life I usually kept locked away, how I'd moved here from a small town in Idaho, chasing a dream of freedom, how this studio was my lifeline, even if it barely paid the bills. Then, without warning, she shifted. The towel slipped slightly, revealing the curve of her waist, and my hands froze mid-motion. "You okay?" she asked, lifting her head to glance at me. Her eyes held mine, and for a moment, the world stopped. There was something raw in her gaze, something that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't been in years. "I'm fine," I lied, forcing a smile as I resumed the massage. But my hands felt different now, hyper-aware of every inch of her skin. I tried to focus, to keep it professional, but the air between us crackled with something unspoken. "Harper," she said softly, after a long silence, "do you ever feel like you're waiting for something, but you don't know what it is?" Her question hit me like a punch. I swallowed hard, my hands stilling again. "All the time," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't tell her that I'd spent years running from who I was, from the small-town whispers that called me different, from the fear that I'd never find a place where I belonged. She turned her head slightly, her eyes finding mine again. "Me too," she said, and there was a weight to her words, like she was confessing something bigger than either of us could name. The session ended too soon, the timer's soft chime pulling me back to reality. Lila sat up, clutching the towel to her chest, and I turned away to give her privacy, though every part of me wanted to stay, to keep talking, to unravel the mystery of her. "Same time next week?" she asked as she pulled on her jacket, her voice casual but her eyes searching. "Yeah," I said, my throat tight. Same time. As she stepped back into the rain, I stood frozen, the scent of lavender and her lingering in the air. I didn't know it then, but that night was the beginning of everything. Every heartbreak, every hope, every moment that would redefine who I was. The next week dragged, each day stretching like taffy, pulling me toward Thursday evening when Lila would walk through my door again. I caught myself glancing at the clock too often, my mind replaying her voice, her eyes, the way her words had felt like a key turning in a lock I'd long forgotten. Portland's gray skies seemed brighter, as if her presence had left a spark in the air. When she arrived, the rain had softened to a drizzle, and she wore a deep green sweater that made her eyes look like polished slate. "Miss me?" she teased, shaking water from her hair. I laughed, hoping it hid the way my heart lurched. "Maybe," I shot back, guiding her to the table. This time, there was no hesitation in her. She slipped behind the screen, and when she emerged, the towel clung to her like a second skin, her movements relaxed, almost deliberate. As I started the massage, her skin warm under my hands, she picked up where we'd left off, talking about her life in fragments, how she'd moved to Portland 2 years ago, how she worked as a freelance illustrator, how she loved the city's chaos, but sometimes craved quiet. "You ever miss home?" I asked, my fingers tracing the tension in her shoulders. She went quiet, and for a moment, I thought I'd crossed a line. Then she sighed, her voice soft. "Home wasn't a place I could stay. Too many expectations, you know?" I did know. I thought of my own hometown, the way my parents' smiles had tightened when I'd come out at 17, the way I'd left for Portland the day after graduation, chasing a life where I could breathe. "Yeah," I said. "I get it." The conversation flowed, easy but heavy, like we were peeling back layers of ourselves. She told me about her art, how she poured her heart into every sketch, how it was the only way she could make sense of the world. I told her about my dream to expand the studio, to make it a haven for people who felt lost, like I had. Then, halfway through the session, she did something that stopped my heart. She reached down, tugged the towel loose, and let it fall to the floor. I froze, my hands hovering above her back, my breath caught in my throat. She turned her head, her eyes meeting mine, bold and unapologetic. "You don't have to stop," she said, her voice steady but laced with something daring. My face burned and I stammered, I should keep it professional." But my eyes betrayed me, lingering on the curve of her spine, the way her skin glowed in the candlelight. She smiled, a slow, knowing thing. "Harper, it's okay. I trust you." I didn't know what to do with that trust. My hands moved again, cautious, professional, but the air between us had shifted, thick with possibility. I focused on the rhythm of the massage, trying to anchor myself, but every touch felt like a question, every breath an answer. When the session ended, she sat up, wrapping the towel around herself, but not rushing to cover up. "You're different," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "You see people. Really see them." I didn't know how to respond. No one had ever said that to me before. Not like that. I managed, my voice barely steady. She smiled again, and it was like the sun breaking through Portland's eternal clouds. As she dressed and left, promising to return, I stood in the empty studio, my hands still tingling from her skin. I was falling, I knew it, but I didn't know if I was ready for where this was going. Lila wasn't just a client anymore. She was a storm, and I was caught in her orbit. The weeks blurred into a rhythm of Thursdays, each session with Lila pulling me deeper into her world. The studio, once just a job, became a sacred space where our lives tangled, her stories, my secrets, our laughter filling the gaps between the rain's soft patter. But with every touch, every glance, the line between professional and personal frayed, and I was terrified of what lay on the other side. One evening, as I worked on her lower back, she spoke about her family, a mother who'd never understood her, a father who'd left when she was 10. They wanted me to be someone else, she said, her voice raw. Someone smaller. I paused, my hands resting on her skin, feeling the weight of her words. I know what that's like, I said, thinking of my own parents, their silence louder than any argument. She turned her head, her eyes searching mine. How do you do it? Keep going when the world tells you you're wrong. Her question wasn't just about me. It was about her, about us, about every moment we'd spent dancing around the truth. I don't know, I admitted. I just try to find places where I can be me, like this studio. She smiled, soft and sad. This place feels like that for me too. That night, she didn't let the towel slip, but the tension between us was louder than ever. I could feel it in the way her muscles relaxed under my hands, in the way she lingered after the session, asking about my favorite books, my dreams, my fears. When she left, she brushed my arm, a fleeting touch that sent sparks through me. See you next week, Harper, she said, and I wondered if she knew how much I was starting to need those words. But doubt crept in like the Portland fog. What was I doing? Lila was a client. I'd built this studio on trust, on professionalism. Crossing that line could ruin everything, my business, my reputation, my heart. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was brave enough to face whatever this was. The next session, Lila arrived with a sketchbook tucked under her arm. I drew something for you, she said, her voice shy but steady. She opened it to a page with a pencil sketch of the studio, candles flickering, the massage table in the center, and me, standing with a quiet strength I didn't recognize. This is how I see you, she said. I stared at the drawing, my throat tight. No one had ever seen me like that, strong, sure, whole. Lila, I couldn't find the words. She stepped closer, her hand brushing mine as she closed the sketchbook. You don't have to say anything, she whispered. But I wanted to. I wanted to tell her how her presence made me feel alive, how her courage made me want to be braver. Instead, I just nodded, and we moved to the massage table, the air between us heavy with unspoken words. As I worked, her breathing slowed, and I thought she'd fallen asleep. But then she spoke, her voice barely audible. Harper, do you ever think about us? My hands stilled. The question hung in the air, fragile and dangerous. I wanted to say yes, to confess that I thought about her every day, that her smile haunted my dreams. But fear clamped down, and I managed only, "What do you mean?" She laughed softly, a sound that broke my heart. "You know what I mean." And I did. But I wasn't ready to say it, not yet. The studio felt different after Lila's question, like the walls themselves held their breath. I spent the next week wrestling with my feelings, torn between the safety of silence and the pull of something deeper. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her sketch, her smile, the way she'd looked at me like I was more than I'd ever believed. When Thursday came, I was a mess. I burned a candle down to nothing, rearranged the oils twice, and nearly dropped a bottle when Lila walked in. She wore a navy coat, her hair loose and wild, and her eyes held a quiet determination. "Hey," she said, and I could hear the edge of her voice, like she was bracing for something. The session started normally, but the air was thick with what we weren't saying. My hands moved over her back, but every touch felt like a confession I wasn't ready to make. Halfway through, she shifted, sitting up and pulling the towel around her. "Harper, we need to talk," she said, her voice steady but soft. My heart pounded. "Okay," I said, stepping back, my hands clenching at my sides. She looked at me, her eyes searching. "I feel something when I'm here. With you. And I think you feel it too." I opened my mouth to deny it, to retreat to the safety of professionalism, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I nodded, my throat tight. "I do," I whispered. Her face softened, and she reached for my hand. Her touch was warm, grounding, and terrifying. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I've spent so long hiding who I am, but with you I don't want to hide anymore." Her words cracked something open in me. I thought of the years I'd spent hiding too, from my family, from myself. "I'm scared too," I said. Us, it could change everything." She smiled, a small, brave thing. "Maybe that's not a bad thing." Before I could respond, she leaned forward and kissed me. It was soft, tentative, but it set my world on fire. I kissed her back, my hands finding her face, and for a moment, nothing else mattered. Not the studio, not the world outside, not the fear that had held me back for so long. When we pulled apart, her eyes were bright, and mine were too. "What now?" I asked, my voice shaky. "I don't know," she said, laughing softly. "But I want to find out." We didn't finish the massage that night. Instead, we talked, really talked, about our fears, our hopes, the lives we'd left behind. She told me about the girlfriend she'd had in college, the one who'd broken her heart. I told her about the girl I'd loved in high school, the one I'd never had the courage to tell. As she left, she hugged me, her arms strong and sure. "Next week?" she asked, and I nodded, my heart full and terrified. That night, I lay awake, replaying the kiss, the feel of her hand in mine. I was falling for her, hard and fast, and I didn't know if I was ready for the storm that was coming. The kiss changed everything. The studio, once a haven, now felt like a stage where every glance, every touch, carried weight. Lila and I were no longer just client and masseuse. We were something undefined, something that thrilled and terrified me in equal measure. The next week, she arrived with a coffee for me, a shy smile on her face. "Thought you might need this," she said, handing me the cup. Her fingers brushed mine, and I felt that same spark, the one that had ignited the first time we'd met. We didn't talk about the kiss, not at first. Instead, we fell into our usual rhythm, her on the table, my hands on her back, our conversation weaving through dreams and fears. But there was a new undercurrent, a warmth that made every word feel like a promise. Halfway through, she sat up, the towel slipping slightly. "Harper," she said, her voice serious. "I want to see you. Outside of this." My heart leapt, but fear followed close behind. "Like a date?" I asked, my voice barely steady. She nodded, her eyes never leaving mine. "Yeah, a date." I wanted to say yes, to throw caution to the wind, but the weight of my life pressed down, my struggling business, my fear of being hurt, the ghosts of my past. "Lila, I don't know if I'm ready," I said, hating how weak it sounded. Her face fell, but she nodded. "I get it. I'll wait." The rest of the session was quiet, the air heavy with what we hadn't said. When she left, I felt like I'd lost something, even though she promised to come back. The next few days were torture. I couldn't stop thinking about her. Her laugh, her courage, the way she made me feel like I could be more. I knew I was pushing her away out of fear, and I hated myself for it. On a whim, I called her. "Lila," I said when she answered, my voice shaking. "Can we meet?" "Not here. Somewhere else." She laughed, a sound that warmed me through the phone. "Name the place." We met at a small cafe in Northwest Portland, the kind with mismatched chairs and art-covered walls. She wore a red scarf, her hair loose, and when she saw me, her smile lit up the room. We talked for hours about everything and nothing, our favorite movies, our worst fears, the way we both loved the way rain smelled. When she reached for my hand across the table, I didn't pull away. "I'm glad you called," she said, her thumb brushing my knuckles. "Me too," I said, and for the first time, I let myself believe this could be real. Dating Lila was like stepping into a world I'd only dreamed of. We spent weekends exploring Portland, wandering through Powell's books, sharing pastries at food carts, kissing under the Burnside Bridge as the rain fell around us. Every moment with her felt like a gift, but the fear never fully left me. I was falling in love, and love, I knew, could break you. Back in the studio, our sessions became something else entirely. The massages were still professional, but the air was charged, our touches lingering, our conversations deeper. One night, as I worked on her shoulders, she reached up and caught my hand. "Harper," she said, her voice soft but urgent. "I'm falling for you." My heart stopped. I'd known it, felt it, but hearing it out loud made it real. "Lila," I took a breath, steadying myself. "I'm falling for you too." She sat up, the towel forgotten, and kissed me, fierce and sure. This time, I didn't hold back. I kissed her like she was air, and I was drowning, my hands tangled in her hair, her arms pulling me close. But the world outside the studio wasn't as kind. One evening, as we walked hand in hand through the Pearl District, a man shouted at us, his words sharp and cruel. Lila's grip tightened, but she didn't let go. "Ignore him," she whispered, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. It wasn't the first time I'd faced hate, but it hit harder with her by my side. I wanted to protect her, to shield her from the world's judgment, but I didn't know how. That night, as we lay in my small apartment, her head on my chest, I asked, "How do you do it? Keep going when people hate you for who you are?" She traced circles on my arm, her voice steady. "I don't let them define me, and I have you now." Her words anchored me, but the fear lingered. What if this didn't last? What if I wasn't enough? The months with Lila were a whirlwind of joy and fear, love and doubt. We built a life together. Nights in my apartment, mornings in her art studio, moments stolen between the chaos of our lives. But the world kept pushing back. My studio started losing clients after a local blog posted about the lesbian masseuse, and Lila's art commissions dried up when a gallery owner refused to work with someone like her. One night, as we sat on my couch, Lila's head in my lap, she looked up at me, her eyes fierce. "We can't let them win, Harper. We're stronger than that." I wanted to believe her, but the weight was crushing me. "What if we lose everything?" I asked, my voice breaking. She sat up, taking my face in her hands. "We won't, because we have each other." Her words gave me courage, and the next day, I made a decision. I reopened the studio as a safe space for the LGBTQ community, offering free sessions to those who couldn't afford it. Lila helped, painting murals on the walls, turning the space into a haven of color and hope. The hate didn't stop, but neither did we. Clients came, slowly at first, then in waves, drawn by the warmth of the space, by the promise of a place where they could be themselves. Lila's art started selling again, her bold, vibrant pieces finding a home in galleries that valued her truth. One evening, as we stood in the studio, now alive with color and light, Lila pulled me close. "I love you," she said, her voice steady and sure. "I love you too," I said, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid. We'd built something stronger than hate, something that could weather any storm. The studio, once just a job, was now a symbol of our love, our resilience, our refusal to hide. And as we stood there, surrounded by the life we'd created, I knew we'd keep fighting, for each other, for ourselves, for everyone who needed a place to belong.